Imagine, if you will, a podcast. A podcast beyond that which is known to man. It exists in both fandom and discovery, in viewing and critiquing. My name is Matt Hurt. This is Anthology. Hello and welcome to Anthology, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. If this is your first time listening, Anthology is a podcast exploring science fiction anthology storytelling during television's first golden age, beginning with The Twilight Zone. Each podcast, I share my thoughts on an episode of this iconic series as a first-time viewer, as well as share some trivia about the episode. I then end each podcast with a bonus review of a movie or show related to the week's episode. You can find more of Anthology at anthologypod.com, and if you want to contact me, you can like the Facebook page at facebook.com/anthologypod. You can tweet me at obsessiveviewer, send an email to matt@obsessiveviewer.com, or call and leave me a voicemail at 317-762-6099. And if you like what you hear and you want to support the podcast, the easiest way to do that is to head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review. The more ratings and reviews I get, the easier it will be for people to find the show in iTunes' search results. Also, if you wish to support Anthology with your wallet, there's a donate button on anthologypod.com and a link in the show notes of this episode. Every donation made using that donate button goes directly toward the fees to keep the podcast running. And for the first time ever on the podcast, I have a guest. I have Brandon Cruz from Submitted for Your Approval, fellow Twilight Zone podcaster and podcaster in general. Brandon, how you doing, bud?
Hey, man, I'm doing all right.
Nice.
It's good to be here, man, and it's good to talk to you again. Last time we talked was last year sometime.
Yeah. When you had me on for to review Execution for season 1 of Submitted for Your Approval, which I had a blast. Right. Oh yeah. So definitely had to get you on for this.
I was so glad to have you on, and it's really cool just getting so many different people onto the show. And then you and I, we had that common anthology bond.
Yes.
And I don't remember, how did we first get in touch? It was like,
I think what happened was it was back, let's see, when was it? Probably March or April, when I was like starting to, because I took that hiatus from Anthology, and like I was just like, okay, well, I'm gonna start this back up again. Let's see if there are any other Twilight Zone podcasts that have cropped up. And like I found Submitted for Your Approval, and then like I was listening to an episode, and I was like, I'm just gonna shoot an email, and then we started emailing back and forth. I think that's the genesis of this pod friendship.
The Sega Genesis of friendships.
Yes, it it blossomed from there. Yeah,
absolutely. And now we're metaphorically holding hands in the podcast space.
We are, yes, and I did not wash mine, so I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what that's supposed to even mean, but yeah. Anyway,
hey, but I gotta tell you, I haven't washed mine either. So, and that's how our bond has grown so much.
Exactly. That's how we're morphing into. We're connected by the bacteria of the internet. Anyway. So, before we lose any more listeners in this weird tangent, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and your history with the Twilight Zone?
All right, yeah. So I'm Brandon Cruz, as you already mentioned a little bit earlier. In this, I do run a Twilight Zone podcast, Submitted for Your Approval. Right now, that podcast I'm going through from episode 1 all the way to the end of the series. Eventually, right? Just bringing on different folks, different personalities, talking about their work, talking about their experiences with the Twilight Zone. And the really cool thing is there are some people who have never seen an episode or known they've seen an episode, all the way to experts in the field. I've just always loved the Twilight Zone. I think one of my earliest television memories is watching the Twilight Zone while I was home from school. And it was the dummy, I believe, and it freaked me out. That, along with Child's Play, made me kick like my buddy dolls, like throw it into the closet.
Nice.
And just be scared to death. And then, of course, the 4th of July marathon, the New Year's marathon. it's just always, it's been like a tradition of mine to watch the show and be a part of it. And just the morality that Rod Serling has, I think whether I knew it or whether I know it or not, or maybe I do know it because I'm talking about it, but whatever. I feel like it's influenced me a great deal in just the way I view the world. And so I think that's really important.
Very cool. Yeah, that's one of the things that propelled me to start this podcast, is that I did not have that experience at all, or I haven't had like the experience with the show. So that's one of the things that I'm liking about it, is I'm meeting people just in general who like email in and through other podcasts who grew up with this or had this show impact their lives in such a significant way. And so I'm really happy that you decided to slum it with me and be on this podcast today. Because
it's not slumming, man. Like your stuff is solid.
Oh, thank you.
So really, if anything, we're on Skype right now, and you can see what my studio looks like, which is just a sweaty garage. So, I mean, if anybody's slumming it, you're slumming it by talking to me.
Exactly. Or not exactly, but you know what I mean. God.
Hey.
Yeah. Whereas my side of it is just I'm in my living room and you can see part of my DVDs, but that's it.
Settlers of Catan up there.
Yeah. Unopened.
Get out.
I know, right? Yep. No, I bought it, and then my friends that I was planning on, like I bought it because we were going to play it and everything. They moved to stayed over, so we haven't really gotten the logistics down with it. But anyway, so tell me about Submitted for Your Approval, which I already know everything, but it's for the benefit of the listeners now.
No problem at all. I'll just tell you like you don't know what it is.
Okay.
And maybe I'll tell it like I don't know what it is. That's dumb.
That would be kind of weird. That would be like what I do every week here on the podcast with the Twilight Zone.
I think it's like just like a bureaucracy style podcast. Like you submit things and then approve them. So what's submitted for your approval is, as I mentioned before, I'm going chronologically through the series. Each episode of the podcast, I with a guest and I, man, grammar's not my strong suit. Anyways, so a guest comes onto the show, and then we talk about a specific episode chronologically through the show's history. And so I've had some really cool people. I've had this guy, Obsessive Viewer Podcast, and also Anthology
that's me.
I've had my wife. She's been on a couple times, usually drunk. And I've had other really cool stuff. Cool folks. I've had Allie Gertz. She's a comedian out in Los Angeles. I've had Graham Elwood, who's also a comedian, and I've had some lesser known folks who are just amazing. Dr. Steve Gronert-Ellerhoff. He's written a book on Carl Jung and Kurt Vonnegut. So he's cool. And then probably one of my favorite guests so far this season is a doctor out from Ireland, and she is just amazing. We recorded the episode, and then we talked for like another hour just about miscellaneous stuff.
That's awesome.
So that's Dr. Miranda Corcoran, by the way.
Nice. And what episode was it that she was on?
She was on The Howling Man. She helped me talk about The Howling Man. Nice. And she went in and talked a lot about the Universal horror movies and how that episode specifically is kind of a change of pace for the Twilight Zone, because it had a more gothic feel. And I tend to agree with her in the sense that there's not really any other episode that has that, like it could be a Universal monster movie.
Nice.
if they really wanted to expand that out. But yeah, I really like bringing on other people to talk about the show and really give their unique perspective on the content. And yeah, sometimes the episodes aren't that great, like Mr. Beavis specifically. Yeah. But I had my boss come on for that one, and he's a really rambunctious, really kind of crazy guy. And he's given me crap actually for like the last 2 months, saying like, man, me do another episode, one that's more
Nice.
Twilight-y. So.
Nice. I really enjoyed that episode because I don't know, that it's kind of fun to talk about the lesser episodes, I guess. Well, at least on your end, I'm sure it is because, you know, you have people to play off of. But I also listened to The Mighty Casey, and
yeah.
that episode with your friend Matt, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Sizemore
is super into baseball. Like I don't know what it was, but the imitation of the slide whistle noise effects and stuff that you guys were doing back and forth. Like I was just cracking up at that, and I don't know if it was just I was delirious or what, but I thought that was a really fun episode to listen to.
Yeah, I think, you know, I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast, that episode, but he and we used to just exchange noises back and forth to each other. He used to drive me to, he'd pick me up, cause we were in high school together. He'd pick me up, and before he'd pick me up in his car, I'd call him up and I'd say, "Hey Matt, I'm ready to go." But before I did that, I would just make a noise like, "Oh," and then he'd respond, "Oh." And then we'd go squam, squeep, squap for 5 minutes straight. And my mom's like, "Brandon, get off the phone and go to school already." So that's that
guy. That is so many levels of weird and ridiculous, but I like it.
You should see our Facebook IM chats. We have this tradition where we just say "oh" to each other.
Really?
And I think our record is no joke saying "oh" to each other for about an hour.
Wow. That is terrific. I like it.
We're stupid.
I'm not going to go that far, but
all right.
Anyway, so today on the podcast, I actually didn't think to mention this before introducing you or anything, but today on the podcast, we are basically reviewing season 1, this is just kind of a wind down kind of episode, just kind of a loose conversation about some of our favorite and not so favorite things about season 1 of the Twilight Zone, because I've finished reviewing the first season at long last. It took me like a year and a half, but I finally did it. And, so I'm really excited to kind of chat about it as a whole. And, so why don't we kind of get started here and why don't you go ahead and tell me your thoughts on the season overall?
Well, you know, the show, if it wasn't good overall, it wouldn't still be a thing, right? It wouldn't be in our pop culture consciousness, as it were. And, you know, obviously there's some hits and there's some misses. Mm-hmm. Ones we already alluded to, the Mighty Casey being one of those hits, I would say.
Sure.
Facetiousness aside, but you know, it had the season as a whole. Just, I mean, time enough at last. You know, that's people who haven't even seen the Twilight Zone know that that's a thing. Mm-hmm. Monsters Are Due in Maple Street. Maybe they don't know the episode. Maybe the imagery isn't iconic necessarily, but people know the story. You know, and so. I think there's a lot to be said for the writing and the cinematography and everything put together through season 1 to make it such a memorable one. I
completely agree. I'm coming as someone who had really no reference for the Twilight Zone. So I knew, like you said, it has endured as a cultural touchstone and a cultural piece of our culture. Let me see if I can squeeze in 2 more culture references there. But
culture.
Yeah. But it's endured. It's this piece of pop culture that is very pervasive throughout our society, and it's something that I was not privy to growing up, as so many people were, and coming at it as a 30-year-old who is just watching it for the first time ever. It's a really interesting experience, and having season 1 to dive into, having it be such a strong block of episodes, is really, really amazing. And it has set the bar really high for me for seasons 2 through 5. And, because like you said, and we'll talk more specifically going forward, but like, I mean, I'm still blown away by the Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, and I watched it months ago. And that episode alone is just ridiculously great and resonant and relevant today. And it's just it's really great.
Extremely prescient, it's like I can't even, I don't think you can emphasize it enough. I can't emphasize it enough just how relevant it is, that concept, still to this day as we go into 2017 and get rid of 2016.
Yeah.
Awful year.
Absolutely. But yeah, and I am so happy that this show has, I don't know, in a word, I would say season 1 is freaking amazing. I guess that's 2 words, but it's really amazing.
No, it's hyphenated, so I think it counts as
yeah,
as one.
Yeah, it's freaking amazing. But it's incredible to me because it's something that I've heard about kind of tangentially. I've seen it referenced countless times, and so I've come to it with this expectation that it's going to be a huge, great thing, and it met, like, it lived up to those expectations, and at many points throughout the season, not the mighty Casey, but at many points throughout the season, it exceeded those expectations, and that is just something that doesn't really. It's kind of a rarity when it comes to me watching stuff. At least I always kind of build it up in my head, and I don't know. I thought season 1 was just phenomenal, and we can kind of get into talking about some of the finer moments of it, I guess, if you want.
All right.
All right.
Absolutely. I'm here for as long as you need me.
All right.
And then the Skype call ends.
Exactly. All right. So I have this broken down. It's okay. So I have a survey on the website on anthologypod.com that I'm going to have those answers kind of separate at the end of this episode. So, I'm not going to bore you with all the responses. And plus it's a few weeks away, so I want to give people a chance to respond. But,
gotcha.
Yeah. So, let's just go through some of our favorite moments from season 1. Like, what's your number one favorite moment from the entire season?
Number one favorite moment. I'm pretty sure when I did the survey, I probably said this, right? It's hard to think of a favorite moment because there are so many good ones, and you don't want to go for the cliche Mr. Bemis sitting on the steps breaking his glasses. You don't necessarily want to say that jumping off of a bridge or it's jumping off of a train, and then the funeral home saying Willoughby on the back. That's the biggest one. I think that the one that sticks out to me, and this is what I think I wrote there originally, was in Judgment Night, where like that the whole loop aspect of it, and really him getting his comeuppance for eternity. I think that kind of hurts. That hurts right there. I'm pounding my chest for those who can't see. But there really are such good ones. People Are Alike All Over with Roddy McDowall.
Yeah,
I think that's a good one too, with the alien woman in the toga, just stepping back in the crowd, and she's like, "Oh, what did I do? I'm a monster." She didn't say that, but I'm putting those words into her head.
If you put the subtitles on, I'm sure it'll pop up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Closed captioning.
Yeah.
Provided by the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, those are like you said, all those are really great moments. And would you say that would that be your number one favorite moment? The People Are Alike All Over, or is it hard enough to narrow down to one? I'm putting you on the spot here.
I know you are. I'm looking at the list just so I'm clear and I don't have anything messed up.
Mm-hmm.
Man, they're so good. Except maybe the fever. Maybe the image of a slot machine standing over Franklin is just bar none. It's the best. There you go.
If you say so. I will say I'm still impressed by the sound effect of it and the way that they did it. It's incredible. But yeah, that didn't will haunt my dreams. That will haunt my dreams.
What? Now I'm gonna flip the script. What's yours? What's yours?
So I have a list of a few here. And I really wanted to revisit them because this is a podcast and it's better to be able to talk about them more clearly. But the one that jumps out to me, my favorite moment probably of the entire season is one of Serling's closing narrations. And it's his closing narration from The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, which I think might be my favorite piece of writing from the entire season as a whole. Like, his closing narration is so beautiful, and the way that it's put together is like the poetry of it and the earnestness of it is so impactful, and it's one of the most like emotionally like resonant moments that I've had. Like, it resonated with me in a big way because the whole episode is about something that is, it's written in with kind of a McCarthyism, blacklisting kind of idea to it. But if you think about it, like, it's more indicative of, humanity as a whole, and it's going through, like, if you think back to like the Salem witch trials and like today, like things going on in the world today, like it's all very much relevant, and it's something that I think is sadly maybe ingrained in who we are as a society. And his closing narration is just beautiful and bleak summation of his point that he was making in that episode. And I loved it. So I think that would be my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a solid example in a great moment. I don't want to take away from that because it really is. And I joke obviously about the Franklin stuff.
Sure.
But there's a reason why Monsters Due on Maple Street is still so relevant.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
That's a great example of why.
Yeah. So I loved that. And then there were a few others, like, I almost want to say the whole episode of The Last Flight, because I really loved that. And also, I'm just such a fan for time travel. Like, it's ridiculous. So throughout the rest of this episode, I'm going to be talking a lot about, the time travel-ness of the season, but most importantly, like, Terrence Decker's, like, his redemption at the end of the episode where he realizes what he needs to do and he goes back and he sacrifices himself for the general. It's the general, yeah.
It's old lead bottom.
Old lead bottom. There you go.
old lead bottom. I'm in the Air Force as my actual job, right. And I always tell people randomly, like, get out of here, old lead bottom. But nobody understands that reference other than me. So it's
that's
lost
awesome. Nice. That's fantastic. Yeah, and a couple other ones that I'll just throw out is Walking Distance. Again, another time travel episode. The whole conversation with his dad, kind of toward the end, is just great. Just great.
Yeah.
And finally, I mean, like, this at the time of this recording, like, my review of this episode hasn't popped up yet, so it's the last episode, A World of His Own. And the moment where Rod Serling pops up is, like, so great. Yeah, I was like, I did not see that coming at all, and it's so fantastic. I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. God, yeah. That's the one. That's the way it goes.
Yeah. It's so great. It's so great.
It's so self-aware. Mm-hmm. I love it.
And that's something.
I mean, that was a. Sorry.
Oh no. I was just gonna say, and that's something that the Twilight Zone up to that point had never been, and I don't know if it ever will be again because I haven't seen the rest of them. But it's just like, it's so cheeky and fun.
Yeah, cheeky. That's exactly the word I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Cheeky, and I'll be completely honest. That's not a word I don't think I've used in at least a year.
Oh, I have it tattooed on my chest, but yeah. Or it wouldn't really be the chest. It would have to be a different area for it to be cheeky, but
that was my prison name.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, so So I also have down here favorite twists and endings, which is, I don't know. I did not think of the criteria of this survey or anything too closely. But what are some of your favorite endings of season 1, whether they be twists or not?
Let's see. I mentioned the people are like all over. I like the twist of him, being in a zoo and really, he not only are. I've talked about this before, but they go to Mars. They find out, hey, people are alike all over. That's stupid. That's not stupid. My explanation and talking about it is
no,
stupid.
You're fine.
So completely disregard that. Perchance to Dream. That's a great one. It's like Inception, but just much more bleak. Yeah. With the Catwoman. I love her. And then let's see. Time Enough at Last. I won't say that it's one of my favorite because I feel like it's not really a twist so much as it is like, oh man, that's kind of messed up.
Yeah, it's dramatic irony or what have you. It's more ironic than anything.
Yeah, this doesn't help anybody. This doesn't help anybody. And Guy, you should be more careful with your glasses. Let's be honest.
Oh yeah. Which is funny. Sorry. I was just gonna say it's funny that Time Enough at Last, like you said earlier, that's one of those episodes that people know the beats of it. People know that, at least by my perspective, that's like the one episode that people know more about than any other episode, just about. And what's funny is that when going through this list and everything, I don't know if you've had this come up too, but it didn't really stick with me that much when thinking of my favorite moments or favorite episodes or even my least favorite moments. I mean, it's a really good episode, but it's weird that it's kind of lost in the shuffle of the greatness of season 1 for me. Did you experience that at all?
I didn't experience that exact emotion or the exact thought. But for me, since I know about that episode so much. Yeah. It's just one of the ones that it's like the go-to, right? Mm-hmm. That, I didn't want to focus on it as much, or maybe I didn't focus on it because, it's like when you walk past the same person every day, you start to not pay attention to them. Mm-hmm. And then when a new guy is at the workplace, you're like, hey, that guy. Right. And he's like, whoa, why are you yelling at me? I'm like, 'cause you're new. And he's like, well, no, I've been here 2 months. You just haven't noticed me. Another one of the twisty ones I would say is the whole love potion of the chaser, right?
Yeah.
And that one's so messed up, and I talk about agency on S4YA about it. Mm-hmm. But I liked comparing it to the Tales from the Crypt episode, mm-hmm. right? With Andrew McCarthy. Yeah.
Yeah, which I reviewed that for the bonus review, and it's funny because I was thinking, like, when starting Anthology, I was thinking, like, maybe if this is fun or successful, maybe I'll start like an anthology horror podcast. Like that Tales from the Crypt episode, I don't want to go off on a tangent or anything. I don't want to sidetrack us too much, but it's like it's kind of weird. It doesn't really, like, the quality of Tales from the Crypt doesn't really hold up as much as, like, say, the quality of the Twilight Zone.
No.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It's so campy horror. Mm-hmm. And really, maybe I'm just in it for the puns.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways,
so comparing
back on topic,
it, yeah. So comparing it to that, how do you feel about the Chaser?
The end of the Twilight Zone one is darker. And I actually prefer the ending to that one. Well, so the Chaser, he just ends up being stuck in this relationship with her. She is stuck with him. She has no agency. She is probably, like, in the back of her mind saying, like, no, this isn't what I want. Mm-hmm. No, I don't want to be with this guy. But she's forced to. And now he's forced to be with her. The Tales from the Crypt, he gets killed, and then she kills herself to be with him. And then in heaven, her face is all messed up. She's like, we're together forever.
Yeah. That, like, up until the end, like, when watching the Tales from the Crypt episode, I kept thinking, like, oh man, what did I get myself into with this? And then like when that ending hit, I was like, this I might actually like better than what happened in the Twilight Zone. And it's kind of up in the air. Like I'm not. Ask me on a different day; it'll be a different answer. But it's kind of hard to gauge because I do like that dark ending of the Twilight Zone. It's more thought provoking than just a mangled face in the afterlife. Because she's also revealing someone. This is one of the faults of it, is that I felt like they didn't really reveal this too heavily. Because at the end of it, I was like, wait, did that just happen? Was that she's pregnant at the end? Because she's got the little sock, and I'm like, okay, I wish that had a little bit more impact, but man, that's such a dark ending. Yeah,
poor kid.
Yep.
It's like, not to give that episode more seriousness than it deserves, but you could think about people who get into relationships and then they have kids and they don't really love each other,
right?
But they're stuck together for the sake of the child, and how good is that for the child, right?
Exactly. It's really a sad kind of sad and dark ending for sure. It was surprising. Poor kid. So, on that note, any other favorite twists or endings while we brought this down to such a dark level?
I'm sure there are some, and I think as we go further, if one pops out at me, I'll make sure to interrupt and go off on another tangent.
Sure. All right. I'm looking forward to that. I only had a couple for this because I was really swamped at work and I didn't have time to really devote to planning this out. I'm terrible. The reveal of the wife in A World of His Own, that she is in fact a creation of his, like that, I was just kind of like if you read my notes, it says something like, oh my God, she's fictional too, or she's fake too, or whatever. And then I'm like, holy shit, this is amazing. And it's like, I was so blown away by it because I did not see that coming. I just thought that it was just going to be more straightforward than that, but they played with it in such a unique way. And I thought that was a really cool way to kind of bring the episode into its final moments.
That's really interesting, actually, because I don't know if I thought about this when I was watching it. I had my friend Daniel on, and I didn't ask him whether or not he saw the twist coming or not. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting that from your perspective, you didn't really see that coming. It was just kind of a shock to you.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's one of those things that I first saw coming the very first time I saw it. But yeah, that's really cool. It's like watching Westworld.
Yeah.
There's so many twists.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was just that whole episode. I thought that was such a great way to end the season because, I mean, there's a freaking elephant in that episode. That just, it blows me away. It's so cool.
Let's address the elephant in the room.
Right.
Red eyes, but we can't see it. It's black and white. So.
Oh yeah. And you already touched on this a little bit, but the ending of People Are Alike All Over is so great. The way that he yells Marcusson at the sky is just it's so beautiful. It's perfect.
Moccasin.
You were right.
Yeah.
So great.
My friend Patty, who was on the show a couple times, she runs the Twilight Zone Instagram. Mm-hmm. Her and I, we hashtag moccasin to each other because that's what it sounds like he's saying.
Nice.
Like, why is he saying moccasin all the time? Just get some new shoes, man.
Right. He just wants some good shoes there. That's ridiculous.
People are like all over, but shoes, moccasins, they're different quality.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You got the name brand, then you got like the Kmart like $10 ones.
God. Yeah. I don't know what else to say about that.
All right. Sidetrack complete.
Oh yeah. We're good. Also, I didn't write this down in my notes or anything, but Long Live Walter Jameson. That ending, like, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's shine a light on that. The special effects were incredible. I thought they were fantastic, and very clever. What did you think of that? For people who haven't listened to your review of it,
I hated it. It's awful. It's really cool that transformation of Walter Jameson's face, which is what they use for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, right?
Right.
Just changing the because it's black and white, and then just changing the filter on there to make it look like he's aged and using like different makeup on his face. That's a really, really cool way to do that transformation.
So clever.
And they do that again too on the Howling Man in season 2.
Nice.
To help make the devil show up. But that's before CGI was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Special, the infancy of special effects. Just they had to be creative with these things, and they really were, and that highlights it right there.
Absolutely. And real quick, just a little side tangent here. Going off script. It's not a script; it's just a list of things. But anyway, so what about owning the Twilight Zone? Because like I splurged and I bought the Fifth Dimension box set DVDs, which are great. But do you own it physically or digitally, or are you just going off at Netflix, or how's your relation to the physical medium with regard to the Twilight Zone?
This is going off script.
Yeah.
Or you're listening. No, I forget which collection I have, right? Because I actually have a few different ones. Nice. Like I started collecting them way back when, and then my wife for Christmas bought me just the full series.
Nice.
I haven't bought it on Blu-ray, but I don't do most of my watching using the DVDs. I actually either switch between Netflix, Hulu, or just those two. Mm-hmm. And I prefer Hulu just because those are the ones from CBS, and they're closest to their originals.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah. And if you're watching them on Hulu, it actually has like the CBS logo in the corner.
Nice.
So that's how I prefer to watch them.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Like I said, I have the DVDs, but like they just announced the repackaging of the Blu-rays like a few months ago. Are you going to pick that up at all?
Yeah, probably not. I'll be honest, and it's not because I don't want to. It's just that I like collecting things, but I also like money, right. and unless there's features that I need to have that aren't already on the DVDs I have. Mm-hmm. It's hard for me to justify to myself, and particularly justify to Chelsea over there, who's probably drinking as I'm talking about this. She's not an alcoholic. She just drinks whenever I talk about Twilight Zone.
I'm going to edit that in a very specific way, just so you know. Like, she's drinking. Okay. Oh, she's an alcoholic. No,
it's okay. I mean, one way or the other, just know she drinks a lot and beats me. No, I can't justify buying any more Twilight Zone DVDs to her. Not until I get Rick and Morty season 2 anyway.
Oh, there you go. How about memorabilia or anything? Like, do you have any like Twilight Zone like figurines or anything like that? I saw, didn't you just post a thing about like you found a mouse pad or something?
Yeah. So at some point in time, my in-laws, they bought me a couple of the Entertainment Earth Twilight Zone figurines. They got me the Gremlin, and they got me David Foster from The Masks.
Okay.
And I would like to collect the rest of them. Mm-hmm. I haven't gone down that path yet. And so the mouse pad came with that collection. So I've gotten some stuff from Disneyland, from the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. Like,
very cool.
Every time somebody goes to Disneyland, especially before January, I say, hey, make sure you grab me some merchandise. So I have like a coaster, a Twilight Zone Tower of Terror coaster, and this really cool shirt with Mickey, Donald, and Goofy in an elevator. and then it drops.
Oh, that's awesome.
Those cool guys.
Very cool.
I also found a random record in a record store that just has like the Twilight Zone theme in disco style. What? It's really crappy, but I have it.
Wow. I know what the theme music for Anthology Season 2 is going to be then.
I'll send it right your way.
Nice.
Free of charge.
Nice. It's funny. I was at a convention here in Indianapolis over the summer, and like they had vendors there, you know, selling the merch and everything. And there was one vendor that had a sizable amount of just figures and action figures and stuff. And they had a few that were Twilight Zone, and I was all like, "Oh man, this is like right when I'm getting the wheels are turning to get it back on track, to get the podcast back, and I'm getting in the groove, and I'm more excited about it than ever." And then I like was looking at it, and I was like, I'm gonna buy one because you know it'll start my I'll have one at work and everything. And then I was looking, I was like, I haven't seen any of these episodes yet. I don't want to be like a poser and like buy one of the figurines from like an episode I'm not going to see for 2 seasons. So I didn't do it, but yeah, that was tempting.
Yeah, you'll have some guy at your work come up to you and say, "Hey, man, I love that episode." And you're like, "Yeah, me too." It's a devil head on top of a box. Like, yeah, right. Remember when William Shatner did this? And you're like, yeah,
yeah.
I got a phone call.
Right, exactly. Yeah, my favorite part was when Rod Serling said something in it at the beginning and end. That was a good moment. Because that's it. Yeah.
Exactly, man. All right, see you later.
Yeah. So eventually I'll probably get some stuff to expand on it, because this is one of the great things about doing this podcast is I'm forcing myself to watch it and not just throw it on in the background when I'm editing the podcast or editing my other podcast or anything. It's just like I'm like watching it like 3 or 4 times before recording an episode, discussing it with myself. So it's like I'm taking it in a lot more than I would if I was just watching it. So it's a show that deserves that. Yeah,
I agree. Whenever there's a marathon on, I tend to, even if I'm not watching it, I just have it playing on in the background. And in same way that you are doing Submit It For Your Approval has forced me to kind of look at it more critically and look for those themes and about in character development and all that material. Mm-hmm. It's not something I look for. Really, anybody looks for unless they're looking at it critically, right? Unless they're looking for it.
Mm-hmm. Was there any episode from season 1 that you completely changed your opinion on, or it completely changed the way you remember it because you were looking at it through a podcaster and reviewer's eye? Again, off script. On the spot.
No, I think I used to think that Mr. Beavis wasn't a terrible episode. Okay. Like in my head, I was like going into it. I was like, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. I'll give it to Lewis and we'll have fun with it. I know it's panned, whatever. And then just watching it, trying to look at it just objectively as possible. I'm like, this episode kind of sucks. I don't want it to suck, but it's really not very good. And that's not because the actors are bad. It's just, obviously it was meant as a spin-off show. Mm-hmm. And you can kind of tell that they just half-assed getting it back and putting it in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah. Yeah. That was such a rough one. And from my perspective, I didn't know anything going into it because I was kind of blindsided by it. I was like trying to find, and there were moments in it that I enjoyed. Like I didn't think that it was the worst thing I'd seen that week or anything, but it was also like,
man, what do you watch? What do you watch that there's worse stuff that week?
Just wait until my next podcast. Yeah, I was trying to pull. I can't even think. Anyway, no, it was
Tales from Tomorrow.
Right. Oh God. Which Tales of Tomorrow isn't that terrible? I've actually reviewed a couple episodes of it as a bonus review, and it's not the Twilight Zone. Like, I had this whole idea that I'll go through the Twilight Zone, then I'll go through the Outer Limits, and then I'll go through like Tales of Tomorrow, and then like other sci-fi anthology shows, and I'm like, this is going to take like a decade and a half to get through all of that. I'm like, I'm just going to kind of reel it in, focus on the Twilight Zone. I already took 1 7-month hiatus, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and the thing about that too is you're starting with a show that is so iconic, and you're only going down from here. Like, not quality of your content by any means,
sure, but
the content of the shows you're going to start reviewing, right?
The content the quality of my content remains to be seen, for sure.
Anyway, needless to say, your work is cut out for you after you finish the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
So, congrats.
Yeah. Exactly. Thank you. I'm probably it's going to be a mess, but kind of getting back on track just a little bit here. Let's talk about some of our favorite episodes of season 1.
Yeah.
Your hypothetically, you're on a comet like James Corey and The Lonely. You only have one episode of The Twilight Zone that you can watch from season 1. You have no robot. You have no car. What is the one episode from season 1 that you would be saddled with for your incarceration on the comet?
Oh man. Let me look at this list. Let me look at this list. There's so many. Only one.
Only one.
I would pick The Lonely. No. Where is everybody? I'm trying to get away from all these ones that make me really, really lonely. I think actually I was going to go with The Last Flight, but I don't know if that would be it. I think that if I had to pick one, I might pick either maybe the Hitchhiker.
Nice.
I'll go with Hitchhiker just for sake of argument.
Okay.
The great Inger Stevens was in that. I like that episode. Although there's a little part where the creepy Navy guy or whatever comes in and he's like, is like hitting on her still. Which by the way, Chelsea, my wife, she's like, she wrote a note for Mirror Image. She helped me with Mirror Image, and she said in one of her notes, I found it as I was cleaning out the garage. Guys, doesn't matter if the girl's crazy. Guys want to get in their pants, and so I think the Navy guy in Hitchhiker is exactly like that. He's like, she's crazy, but maybe she'll put out.
Sure,
but overall, I like the Hitchhiker. It's really suspenseful, and it's moody, and just it gave me chills the first time I watched it again. Just at the very end with the reveal that she's dead, and her body just changes, and everything about her changes, and she becomes much more cold. Yeah, and it's really creepy to me.
Oh yeah, that ending where when she comes to the realization and she kind of has that just really distant kind of read on her dialogue is just so that's sticking with me for a little while. But yeah.
You know what? I just changed my mind.
Uh-oh.
It's
Mr. Beavis, isn't it?
It's Mr. Beavis. Damn you, Mr. Beavis! Damn you! He's always coming after me. Him and his guardian angel. No, I changed my mind. It's going to be Perchance to Dream.
Nice.
I think that's the one I would pick, because there's something about it that every time I watch it, I don't get tired of it. There's not any part of that I'm like, this is wasted airspace, or they dragged it out too long. I think it's a perfect episode.
Nice. I will not fight you on that at all. I don't know why I would, but that would be terrible. But yeah,
break a glass.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great choice, and that's an episode that, like, I haven't really revisited the first like 5 or 6 episodes since I started the podcast, because I took that 7-month-long hiatus, and like that was a completely different format to the podcast. So, like, I remember not really being that taken with Perchance to Dream, and
right.
I think that that's an episode that it really deserves to have another pass at from me. But yeah, and I could see that's an episode that wouldn't get boring either, because, like you said, it's something that's very much clever. It's steeped in its cleverness of its storytelling.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And plus, eventually, when I'm on this asteroid and I'm getting sick of my life, I'll be like, hey, that's a good idea. I should jump out of a window too.
There you go. And then the great Twilight Zone twist is that there are no windows, and you're doomed to not be able to jump out.
No! Damn you! You finally did it.
Exactly. Yeah, I'd probably pick The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, because I was just so...
Sell out.
I know. I was just so blown away by that episode. That was like an episode where I got to it. It's like the 22nd episode of the season, I think. And like, I've already gone through several episodes. I know what to expect. And then just the tightness of the script and how impactful it was just as a story felt so right to me. Like, it was like, that was like a moment where I was like, okay, I'm not watching and reviewing this classic TV show. I'm watching and reviewing what could become one of my favorite shows of all time. And it's like, it just blew me away. Even though the little kid, something about the way that he talked, I don't know, bugged me.
Exactly. That's why it can't be one of the ones I take on to the asteroid with me, because I mean he looks way too old to be like 12 or whatever they say he is. I mean I say this on my show, but he looks like he's 34. Like
he does.
Like, Johnny, what? Come on, you're 34 now. Stop trying to scare us with your comic books.
Is that a 5 o'clock shadow? I don't.
You work at the docks, Johnny.
Oh yeah,
and everyone's just so quick to be like, yeah, oh no, comic book.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. That was one thing that was kind of like, okay, they're a little quick. They're a little quick, but I mean, it's a 25-minute episode, so
you got it.
Yeah, and I have a few others here, but that would be cheating a little bit on the concept that I've put forth. But technically, I said 2. I said 2. That's true. I'll put it this way. The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street would be my one choice, but I would try to smuggle in A Stop at Willoughby, Walking Distance, The Last Flight, and probably I Shot an Arrow into the Air.
You're smuggling in so many.
I know, right?
He's gonna smuggle in like maybe one, maybe 2 more, but not exactly. You're like, Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. It's my number 1, but I tried to smuggle in Where Is Everybody? One for the Angels, Mr. Denton on Doomsday, the 16mm Shrine.
Exactly. I have 31 others that I can go through also.
Cheater.
Yeah. Screw it. But no, I would also I would probably put special mention on Walking Distance or The Last Flight. Really, any time travel one also, because again, time travel, I love it.
It's the best.
It really is. And I'm kind of hoping, like, this season had a lot of time travel in it. There was, like I said, Walking Distance, The Last Flight. I want to say there was 1 or 2 others. I can't remember now off the top of my head. I don't have it right in front of me, but I'm kind of wondering, Judgment Night, sort of. But like, and you don't have to tell me because that would be a spoiler, sort of, but like, I'm kind of curious how, going forward, like any other time travel episodes, like I'm wondering if there are any that are as good as season 1. Again, you don't really have to answer it, but
okay, I won't.
Okay.
I mean, we just talked about an episode that the trouble with Templeton is kind of time traveling a little bit.
Sure.
Just a little bit. Just a tad bit. And I really like that one.
Okay.
I think there's a couple other ones. Nice. Yeah, there's one with the professor from another one with the professor.
Oh, nice. From
Execution. That's a time traveling one.
Oh yeah, Execution. Yeah, and I was just kind of the one that we reviewed together on your show. Jeez.
That's what it was. We couldn't see it.
Right.
Couldn't see it because it was right in front of our face.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
How do we forget about Execution?
I know that's ridiculous.
Anyways, the professor is in another time traveling one.
Oh, nice. I think I saw that when I was doing my notes for that episode of Anthology, but yeah. Okay, so these can be kind of quick because they're kind of the downer ones, but least favorite moments.
Shit. Sorry about. I was shooting the gun.
Gotcha.
Shit. Right.
I don't know. You're in this weird window thing in front of me. Like you're pointing a finger gun at me. I'm gonna have to shoot you because I don't understand things because I'm like the guy in Execution. That was a really forced reference.
Yeah. No, it's okay. It works.
Yeah, there we go. Least favorite moments or endings. We can bunch those two together. What were some of the downer moments of season 1 of the Twilight Zone for you? Or is that too sacrilegious to bring up for this iconic property?
I wouldn't say. I would say Nightmare as a Child was an ending that I didn't really like, and the reason I didn't like it was too Hitchcockian in the sense that all right, let's explain things to the audience instead of letting the audience figure it out on their own, right? Yeah. At the end of People Are Like All Over, there's not these two aliens that are like outside looking at him inside the cage and talking to each other and said, "We are aliens and he's human. He's human from Earth. We're not all that different from them, are we?" Right? There's not that explanation. And in Nightmare as a Child, like that's what this doctor and the police officer, I think, they're explaining what happens to this young woman. She's repressed memories. Yeah. So I thought that was a little forced, you know.
That made my list too. It wasn't, the whole episode felt like I was watching like Alfred Hitchcock Presents instead of The Twilight Zone. Yeah. Although Terry Burnham was really fantastic in that episode. I thought she was great as a creepy kid. But the episode as a whole just didn't work for me that much.
Yeah, it didn't really for me either. And I talked to one of my friends, Carrie Poppy, who is on a different podcast. Oh no, Ross and Carrie. And she was like, "It's an alright episode, but repressed memories, that's not a real thing. That's not repressed memories." It was interesting talking to her because we just talked about how like this primitive idea of what repressed memories are and what they're capable of in kind of pop culture back then.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and how about least favorite episodes as a whole? I want to say that Mr. Beavis is going to be on here for you. Am I right in that estimation?
I think that's a good conclusion. That's a very good conclusion.
Yeah, same with me. But go ahead. More about Mr. Beavis. I don't think there's really anything else to say about the episode that hasn't been said. It's just really not a good episode. And I watched
it was one of the few episodes where before recording, I rewatched it with my guest, Luis Reyes, and he fell asleep on the couch watching it. I'm like, dude, we have to record in like 20 minutes about this episode. You're not even watching right now. And then he got up and he's like, yeah, it was boring the second time too. Like, all right, cool, let's move forward. But yeah, it just sucks.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Beavis.
Yeah. It wasn't that good. It really wasn't. And it has like, I found myself trying to meet it halfway or try to find some kind of something to latch on that would make me enjoy it more. And like when he goes back into the office, after he's accepted that that this is his life and he's going to lose his job. Like I liked the kind of time travel-y thing where it's like he goes in and like this is a different perspective from a scene earlier. Like I liked that, but also it's like the whole time I just wanted to scream at him and say, you can have both. You can be weird, but do your job and do a good job and keep your job. Like, come on.
I've been in the Air Force for 16 years. I'm proof you can be weird and still have a job. It's a thing. Like, I listen to zither music all the time at work. It's a thing.
Yeah. Mr. Beavis just existed at a time where earbuds weren't a thing, so that was his ultimate downfall.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if there was a real guardian angel out there for each one of us, then like they would have stopped us from having to watch it. like I would have a guardian angel like come on and just record the podcast for me.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd be like, "Hey guys, this is Bill. I don't know why my guardian angel's name is Bill.
Right.
I'm here for Brandon, and let me just record some of your approval. Okay, look, guys, the episode sucks. Don't watch it."
Oh yeah.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks.
Oh yeah. So Mr. Beavis, in addition to not being good, proves that guardian angels don't exist because they didn't come down for you to record that.
If I lost my faith in God, it was when a guardian angel didn't stop me from watching an episode.
Do you think it would have been any better if they would have gotten Burgess Meredith in the role? Like, do you think he would have added anything to it? Although I think that it was more that they were. I don't think he was ever intended to be Mr. Beavis in the Twilight Zone episode as it aired. He was supposed to be in the show that it was going to be. But just hypothetically, do you think that he could have brought anything to the role?
I think he could have, but I think there's only so much you can do as an actor with a script. He's in another episode later on. And I'm showing how stupid I am. I don't remember the name of the episode, but where he gets like really, really strong. Mr. Dingle the Strong. Duh, got it.
There we go.
And that's kind of a silly episode, but he makes it work because it's Burgess Meredith, right? So I think he could have added something to Mr. Beavis, but I don't know how much.
Yeah.
I don't know how much.
You can only polish I feel bad saying turd, because it's still Rod Serling, and it's still the Twilight Zone, but you can only add so much to it.
You can only squeeze so much water out of a rock. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. And then the Mighty Casey, those two episodes kind of stand out to me as two episodes that felt out of place in the whole season, really. To me, they kind of stood out as not fitting with the grander show. And that, I mean, it kind of, maybe it's due to Mr. Beavis being originally a pilot script and the Mighty Casey being an episode they had to completely redo because the actor died. But yeah, so I don't know, that you just recently talked about it, sort of recently to my ears, because I just recently listened to it on the podcast. But
throw in the baseball. There you go. Yeah, I think with anthologies, you kind of have to bury some of the bad episodes.
Yeah.
So if they had known that those were going to be bad episodes, if they had the ability of clairvoyance, maybe they could be like, oh, you know what? Let's actually put Mr. Beavis like more towards the middle. Let's bury it in kind of there. Let's not push it towards the end of the season where we want people to stay with us till next year, right? But yeah, because Mr. Beavis is not good, as we've already established.
Right.
The Mighty Casey is not one of my favorites. I mean, not because it's baseball, but just because it's not super great. But at least they ended on strong with a world of his own. So
yeah,
at least we got that.
Yeah, there we go. Also, I'll throw in as kind of a dishonorable. I don't even want to say dishonorable mention because I did grow to like this a little bit more than I originally did. But Mirror Image was an episode I was not crazy about.
You're not crazy about the guy running at the end?
No,
right next to himself?
as much as I would like to be. No, that did not work for me. So yeah, I'll throw that in there too.
Like in your head, if you didn't have like the cheesy image of him chasing his double, like in your head, would that be a better ending? Like if it was done right? Like if it was done now, do you think that would have affected your opinion on the ending?
It would have been a little bit easier to swallow, but I think that my problems with it was that it was a little bit more ambiguous than I would have liked it to be. And I think that even if they did the effects right, or like they had the effects, the budget to do it, or the technology to do it well, I think that I would still have problems with it because it seemed like it was going one way, or it didn't seem like it was really committing to one like thought or one central idea through the episode. Like much like my really kind of half-assed answer to your question here. It didn't really focus on one specific thing, but it was definitely I think it had some script problems with me too. But the goofy ending also didn't really help matters at all. But I ended up liking it a little bit better than I thought I would. So I don't know.
Yeah, I got an email from a listener, and I think he emails all the Twilight Zone podcasts.
I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, and he mentioned like that his thoughts were that everybody in Mirror Image was getting replaced at this bus station, and like including like the bus attendant and all the people who were in the bus station, and I thought that was a more interesting thought coming out of it. Like this invasion of the body snatchers, where all the people fall asleep and then they get replaced by their mirror image. Yeah,
and I think I would have liked that a lot more if that was done that way. But unfortunately, it's not. And yeah, I believe it's Greg that was emailing.
Yes.
Yeah. Great guy. Greg. I always get a kick whenever I get an email from him on it. But yeah, I mean, it's a good read on it. It's a good read, but I don't know. I wish it was something more substantial in the episode, if that was what they were going for.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. I got you. Shouldn't have to read too much into it and add your own story to make an episode good.
Exactly. Okay, so to kind of wind down, because I've held you hostage long enough here, I think. To kind of wind down, going forward in season 2. Now, I'm in a position where I've never seen any episode of season 2. So, judging from season 1, season 2 compared to season 1, how am I going to like it? What can I expect out of season 2? Are there any drastic changes in the show that much without spoiling too much?
Let me go back in my head of all the episodes I've watched so far this season, because I'm working my way through season 2 obviously right now.
Right.
I in some ways I think I like season 2 a little bit more than season 1.
Interesting. Okay.
In some ways, and maybe that's too premature because I'm not even halfway through the season yet. But I mean, the quality is still there. They're just maybe the episodes aren't as memorable, or not as iconic necessarily. I mean, there are obviously the Howling Man is in season 2, and which is a really good episode, as I mentioned before, with Dr. Corcoran. The Nick of Time is William Shatner. That's the one with the bobblehead devil.
Nice.
That's to those not watching, that's my impression of the little head moving. And the Obsolete Man is another great one in season 2, and that's at the very end. I mean, I say there's not really any iconic ones, but I just mentioned 3.
Right.
Those are all really good episodes. So yeah, it's premature, but I think you'll like season 2.
Nice. I'm looking forward to it. I'm also Eye of the Beholder, isn't it? And that's one of the ones that has permeated everything.
Smack my head.
Right.
Smack my head. Yeah. Eye of the Beholder, The Invaders. Those are 2 other ones. Dude. Yeah, okay. It's solidifying my position.
Nice.
Season 2.
Well, we'll have to see what weird nitpicks I can have for season 2 and alienate more of my audience here on Anthology.
Alienate nothing.
Okay, so to kind of wind down, thanks for coming on, man, and chatting with me. This has been fun.
No problem.
Yeah. And, I'm not quite sure.
I'm having so much fun.
All right, well there you go. It's weird if you're dancing and we're still holding hands. That would be that's kind of a weird image that I just put into the viewers. Yeah. Into the listeners' heads. So to kind of wind down, what where can we find you online and submitted for your approval? And what does the future hold for your podcasting?
Oh man, you would ask me the hard hitting question.
Yes.
Let me grab my giant book of links.
Nice.
All right. Get my scroll. All right. So there's a few ways you can get a hold of me for submitting for your approval. If you want to get a hold of me, like send me notes or anything like that, I'm on Facebook, facebook.com/S4YA. That's Sierra, the number 4, Yankee Alpha podcast.
Nice.
I mean, that took way too long, but facebook.com/S4YA podcast. I'm on Instagram and Twitter. Both of those are at S4YA_podcast. Also Gmail, S4YA podcast without the underscore at gmail.com. Also, I have a phone number that I spent like 30 hours trying to find something with TZ pod in it, and nobody's ever called it. So, but that's the thing. 860-GO TZ pod. Okay. And then I'm on my website is www.apatheticenthusiasm.com/ I got to get a better link for this /submitted -for your approval. There has to be an easier way. There has to be.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's terrific. That's terrific.
Yeah. I didn't plan all those links out when I started everything up, so maybe I'll get them fixed.
Yeah,
and of course,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just gonna say, and of course, I'm on iTunes, Stitcher, any podcatcher. I'm out there. So, hit me up anytime. I always have my phone on me. I always have Twitter on me. So if somebody shoots me a message, I will respond to you. At the very least, I'll heart it.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, funny on that same note, I also have that voicemail account set up, and I don't know. Some episodes I don't even mention it because I'm like, no one's really calling, and it's kind of like, if I do incorporate voicemails, it's kind of, I don't know, it would be a whole thing, but I don't know. Yeah. So let's call each other's voicemails, essentially, is what I'm getting at here.
Let's do it.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Well, thanks again for coming on, and I look forward to all of your podcasting and all of your work in the future. And can't wait to hear your thoughts on season 2. Once I get to it.
I just want to say thank you so much for having me on the show. It means a lot to hanging out with you.
Oh.
And we established this podcast friendship, our pod friendship our friend cast,
Right.
if you will. And I just think it's so cool. Before I started podcasting, I didn't know that I didn't expect to ever like mate and make relationships with folks that I'd just across the country, just audio wise. Mm-hmm. And this is just so cool to me. So again, thanks for having me on the show and being my friend.
I agree completely. And, and you're welcome. And I will be hitting you up for money, pretty soon, since we are at that point in our friendship here.
No problem. Just send it. Just give me a call, 860-GO-TZ-POD. leave me a voicemail.
All right. Well, thanks again. And, yeah, that's it for season 1. I'll do a whole thing with the surveys and stuff here. So this won't be the actual end of the episode, but it's an awkward transition to end this, interview here. So thank you guys for listening and stay tuned. Okay, thank you once again to Brandon Cruz for joining me for this episode discussing Season 1 of The Twilight Zone. I highly recommend checking out all of his podcast endeavors. And I also recommend checking out his Rick and Morty podcast. It's Interdimensional RSS, the unofficial Rick and Morty podcast, which was recently launched on apatheticenthusiasm.com. Highly recommend checking that out. Brandon is a great guy, and I was really glad to get him on this episode to talk about the Twilight Zone and various tangents and everything. It was a fun time. Hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. So now what I'm going to do to kind of wind down this episode, because it has run a bit long, which is fine. I'm going to go ahead and read the survey results that I got on the website at anthologypod.com/survey. Got a few responses, so I'm just going to kind of go through them and read them. First up, Carla Margolis. She said that her favorite season 1 episode was Passage for Trumpet. And when asked why it was her favorite, she said, Jack Klugman gave such a beautiful, sweet performance in this episode. My dad was a jazz musician and broke on and off having to hawk his instrument over and over. I love the actors being in their own world as he tries to talk to them. I love this episode and his heartbreaking performance in praise of Pip in a later season. I was happy this episode ended on a sweet and positive note. And let's see, her least favorite episode was The Fever. And she said, although I like the acting in this episode, the sound the machine makes is so off-putting, I rarely want to watch it. And as for favorite moment or scene from season 1, she said, there are so many. I love Walking Distance when the lead leaves the gas station and can be seen walking away in the mirrored reflection through the looking glass moment. And least favorite moment or scene from season 1 is Mr. Denton on Doomsday. It sounded too painful to watch Mr. Denton being mocked and humiliated. I totally get that. It is really really tough to watch, because you just empathize so much with that character. And favorite ending of season 1? My favorites have changed so often over the years. Right now, my favorite ending would be tied between Where Is Everybody and A World of His Own. And least favorite ending of season 1? I know everyone loves the ending to Time Enough at Last, but I have always felt it to be very unfair. Usually in Twilight Zone, a kind of moral justice is meted out at the end, and in this era, the fellow students' only desire was to read. And the punishment was far too harsh, but great performance by Burgess Meredith. And to answer the question of how did Carlo feel about season 1 of the Twilight Zone overall? So many wonderful episodes bursting at the seams. Love the vast majority of the episodes in this season. So thank you for your response there. And the next one comes in from Greg Tyson, who has written into the show several times, and as always, his feedback and input into the episodes is always appreciated. His favorite season 1 episode was the After Hours. And he said that it's the unapologetically surrealistic feel of the episode, the genius staging of Marcia White's incarceration in the department store, and the twist ending are all reasons that it was his favorite. And he said Anne Francis is also a babe for the ages. or his least favorite is a tie between Mr. Beavis and the Mighty Casey. And he said, I did, however, appreciate the message of Mr. Beavis and Rod Serling's wistful intro in Casey. They are episodes obviously near and dear to Serling's heart, which makes the ultimate direness of both products all the more depressing. His favorite moment or scene from season 1, at the end of Where Is Everybody, when Mike Ferris comes out of his delusion, we see he has smashed a clock on the wall of his isolation booth at the start of the episode, just before Mike's slow descent into madness while exploring an eerily empty town over the course of a day. He knocks over a clock. The time the clock displays is roughly identical to the time on the clock Mike smashes at the episode's conclusion, suggesting Inception-like that a day in Mike's delusion lasts only seconds in the waking world. Man, that is an awesome observation. That is fantastic. He also said the opening of A World of Difference is also a real kick in the head. Least favorite moment or scene of season 1 was how Gart's wife says Huckleberry Finn. I'll have to go back and check that out. Favorite ending of season 1. I do remember she said it kind of. I get that. Favorite ending of season 1 was Corey's artificial love interest in The Lonely having her face blown off as a turn I won't soon forget. And least favorite ending of season 1, while I like mirror image, overall the quaint effects work utilized while harried Paul Grinstead chases his doppelganger really leaves a sour taste in one's mouth. And how did he feel about season 1 of The Twilight Zone overall? Greg said, the best season of The Twilight Zone and one of the best seasons of television ever. Essential viewing. The embarrassment of riches on display is staggering considering how many episodes they produced. A Serling absent show would likely have validated that age-old saw, quantity does not necessarily equal quality. Sadly, the amount of output demanded of Serling really took a toll on the man, as the seasons ahead will demonstrate. And I'm looking forward to going forward and seeing how the show evolves in time, despite that somewhat ominous statement. The next reply comes from Kevinova from kevinova.com. That's KEVYNOVA.com. And their favorite episode was The After Hours, saying, after 30 years and hundreds of viewings, it still scares me, but also makes me laugh at times. Least favorite season 1 episode was The Mighty Casey, saying, I still love it, just not much of a sports fan. I can understand that. Favorite moment or scene of season 1. This is too hard to decide, but for me, the scene where Lou sacrifices himself in One for the Angels. That's up there for me too. Least favorite moment or scene of season 1. They put none. I can respect that. Favorite ending of season 1 was Mirror Image. And least favorite ending of season 1 was The Lonely, just because it's depressing. And finally, how did you feel about season 1 of The Twilight Zone overall? It's a single greatest debut season of any show in television history. And I mean, it's up there. It's definitely up there. Yeah, again, that comes from Kevinova at kevinova.com. And, those are actually all the form responses that I have from the survey. The other one I had was Brandon's, but we kind of went through all that earlier in this episode. So first of all, I just really, once again, I really appreciate everyone listening to the podcast and interacting with me and interacting with me, giving me feedback, all that stuff. And it's really, really appreciated. And I'm really looking forward to digging into season 2 and really expanding my knowledge of the Twilight Zone. And on that note, I actually got a piece of feedback, the beginning of January, from listener Carlos. And I want to kind of just touch on that here in this episode, because he gave some really good, constructive criticism that I kind of wanted to address on the podcast. So I'll read a portion of the comment that he left on the, blog post for bonus episode 10 of Anthology that covered Shut Up and Dance from Black Mirror season 3, which that blog post is at anthologypod.com/bonus10. So Carlos writes, I generally like the podcast and have listened to several of your episodes. I listen to the Twilight Zone podcast as well. I do have a few comments, however. I notice that you oftentimes unfairly call into question certain parts of episodes. For instance, in A Passage for Trumpet, you use the word dated for an effect. As a previous commenter mentioned about another episode you created, these shows were broadcast in the 1960s. What may seem dated now probably wasn't dated then. Many of these themes and effects were copied for decades after these shows aired. In the same podcast, you mentioned that you feel that the mention of Gabrielle's trumpet was foreign to you and that it took away from the episode. Again, this was 1960s America. The vast majority of people would have known the reference. You made another comment about something Jack Klugman's character said in the pawn shop. Language changes over time. Someone writing in the 1960s can't be expected to anticipate what language will be like 40 years later. Lastly, in your podcast for A Nice Place to Visit, you commented that you've never heard of the phrase. I would wager the vast majority of people in this country have heard the phrase, if not now, then definitely in the 1960s. And then he goes on to just say that he generally likes the podcast. There are real flaws in some of these episodes. Some aren't great stories, some have bad acting, and some twists you can see coming a mile away. Though I might add that you can see them coming a mile away because they've been copied over and over again since the original series aired. And then he went on to say, that being said, what might get me to stop listening to the podcast is if you keep nitpicking about things that you just don't happen to know anything about because you live a different life than most people were living in the 1960s. And then he concludes by saying you can't hold writers from the 1960s accountable for what someone in the year 2016 knows or doesn't know. So, first of all, I just want to say thank you, Carlos, for that comment. I really appreciate the feedback and the constructive criticism. What I want to kind of address about it really is that a lot of the times when I make those comments, like saying that I didn't know what Gabrielle's trumpet was, I didn't know some of the effects look kind of silly by today's comparisons, I always do that with the caveat that I am watching it for the first time in 2016, 2017, as a person who's never seen the Twilight Zone. I always do that with that caveat, and I never use those criticisms or those, not even criticisms, those nitpicks, because they are nitpicks. I am nitpicking the show. I never use those nitpicks to influence my overall enjoyment of the episode. Those are just comments from my perspective as someone in 2017 who was watching it for the first time. It's just kind of one of the things about the podcast is that I'm experiencing it for the first time. So I'm going to make those comments, I'm sure, but I will be more conscious of how I make those comments, because I don't want anyone to think that I'm using that perception of the show, to essentially to critique the show, because that's really not fair. It's really not fair to say like, okay, well, the zoom up, the tight zoom on the lady screaming as Jack Klugman's character gets run over in A Passage for Trumpet. That was kind of silly by today's standards, so this is a lesser episode for me. I never want to make that connection. I never want to make it seem like I'm making that connection, that I'm faulting the episode for it being a 50-year-old show. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit. And once again, Carlos, thank you for writing in and letting me know how you feel. And I hope that my comments going forward don't take your listenership away. But I do appreciate you listening, and I appreciate everyone listening, and I appreciate everyone who's written in over the course of the first season. And I'm really excited to go forward and watch season 2 of the Twilight Zone. I'm going to be starting season 2 here in a couple weeks with King 9 Will Not Return, and the bonus review on that episode is going to be Bomber's Moon, an episode of Playhouse 90. The entire episode of Bomber's Moon is on YouTube right now, so I'll put a link to that in the show notes of this episode, so you guys can check it out and be prepared for the first episode of season 2 of Anthology. And finally, next week we're going to have a special guest on the show to talk about the time element. That's going to be Tiny from the Obsessive Viewer. He and I recorded a review of it. We kept it spoiler free because the time element unfortunately isn't that easily accessible. It's available in several of the Twilight Zone DVDs and Blu-ray sets. I have it in my Fifth Dimension box set, and that's how we watched it. But unfortunately, it's not on YouTube. I don't know if it's available to purchase on like Amazon or iTunes or anything like that. However, there is a radio drama version of it on Audible that is $1.39. It's a 39-minute recording. It's got Stacy Keach, and I didn't write down who else was in it, but yeah, it's $1.39. It's on Audible. You can check it out to get the story there. It sounds like that's a really good production value on it as well. So having said all that, guys, thank you so much for listening to season 1 of Anthology, and also checking out my Black Mirror bonus reviews. I'll be having my final Black Mirror bonus review episode up shortly to review Hated in the Nation. And yeah, that about does it for this episode of Anthology. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to Anthology, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find more episodes at AnthologyPod.com, and you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or your preferred podcast app. If you'd like to help support the podcast, please take a few minutes to leave a rating and a review on iTunes. The more reviews I get, the higher the show will be ranked in iTunes search results, making it easier for people to discover it and grow the podcast. Of course, you can always email me your thoughts and feelings about the show to matt@obsessiveviewer.com. You can also tweet me at obsessiveviewer, like the Facebook page at facebook.com/anthologypod, or you can call and leave me a voicemail at 317-762-6099 for a chance to have it played on the show. If you like what you've heard here, I urge you to check out The Obsessive Viewer, a weekly movie and TV podcast I host with my friends Mike and Tiny. Also check out the Obsessive Viewer blog at obsessiveviewer.com, where I write movie reviews, TV reviews, and the occasional editorial about the business of entertainment. If you want even more obsessive content in your life, subscribe to the Obsessive Viewer subreddit at r/obsessiveviewer, and check out obsessivebooknerd.com, our sister site for book reviews, author spotlights, and a general celebration of reading. Finally, if you're philosophically curious, check out my friend Tiny's side project podcast, The Secular Perspective, which explores the concepts of faith, religion, and existence from the perspective of secular hosts. You can find that at thesecularperspective.com. Once again, thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.